There are a few key things to remember which we'd like to leave you with before going on to questions and answers. One is that accent and intelligibility are different things. This is borne out by volumes of research. It's something that students and teachers need to be aware of. Everybody has an accent, as Richard spoke about. It's just a combination of speech sounds that you characteristically make. And it is flexible. It's not a static thing. It's dynamic. And speakers naturally vary the way that they pronounce particular words, as well as other features of their speech, such as vocabulary and style, depending on who they're speaking to, why they're speaking, and so on. Something that we need to raise awareness of, as Katie said, is that learners have a choice. No one approach to anything about language is going to be right for everyone. An ELF approach to pronunciation is no exception. Some learners may need and want to approximate a particular accent of English, which may be an accent which exists in native speaker communities, or it may be an accent which reveals some of their original identity, so to speak, their geographical origin, or anything else about themselves. And there should be some choice in determining what they're aiming for. The other thing to remember is that intelligibility is a two-way street. There are two people involved in interaction. There's a speaker and a listener. And this is part of what you would need to raise awareness of in the classroom if you don't already, but particularly in an ELF context, as there are so many more speakers and listeners involved in terms of first language backgrounds and first language influences. It is something that you need to approach with care, to approach sensitively, as the issues surrounding accent, identity, prejudice, and so on are quite sophisticated. And so you do need to be careful in how you approach these discussions. But as with everything else, know your students and talk with them about why you're doing what you're doing. And finally, and this is key, that for many students, native speaker norms simply may not be appropriate. For a very long time, the English language teaching industry has taken a more native speaker-oriented approach and assumed that people using English as a second language are learning it in order to assimilate or integrate within a native-speaking community. And that simply may not be the case. Certainly, statistically, it's unlikely to be the case nowadays. And so it's just about teaching your students to handle the English language as it really is, as it's used all around the world, regardless of where you are. What's important is who is speaking to whom. And Richard talked about ownership. You cannot own a language. It's not something like a house or a car that you can say is one person's. There needs to be an element of flexibility. And it's about teaching your students to manage that flexibility. And this is an emerging area which is developing all the time. So it's really quite an exciting thing to be a part of. We'd like to finish just with one quotation from Robin Walker, again, whose book reference is on your handout, which is that to remember through all of this, even if the concept of English as a lingua franca is somewhat new to you, as Robin says, teaching pronunciation for ELF is primarily about rethinking goals and redefining error, as opposed to modifying classroom practice. So we hope that in this presentation this evening, we've given you some food for rethought in your own classroom practice. And thank you very much.